the topic today is going to be a concept called the middle way. All right. When we talk about the middle way in self-leadership, the middle way inside of this program, one of the laws of reclaim is, in fact, it's the first one is in employ balance, right? It's the first one. They're in no particular order, but that is the first one. And have you ever met an all or nothing firefighter? Have you ever met somebody that treats it as if I can't do it at all, or if I can't do it perfectly, I'm not going to do it at all, right? Maybe that's one of you. Maybe all of us at some point in time have exhibited these qualities. Okay. So how does that keep us stuck in the fire service? And tell me this, like, have you ever caught yourself saying one of these things, right? It could be, well, I was supposed to, have this diet, but, I blew it on Saturday. So the rest of the week is just a wash, isn't it? Hey, I had 4th of July weekend. I had, you know what? I ended up eating one more hot dog than I said I was going to eat. So I washed it down with 8 beers. Okay. Anybody ever had one of those situations come up, right? Hey, I'll go back to work. I'll go back to working out when life settles down. That's a story that I've often told myself over the years. It's like, hey, and then you come to find out that it never does. Almost every one of these situations, I'll start on Monday, I'll do it when. I want to introduce you to this idea of the middle way and what it actually means to stay away from extremes, right? Because the truth is, you can have too much of anything, almost, right? You can drink too much water in the course of an hour. If you drink a gallon of water, you're going to die. And yet, nobody's making the argument that clean drinking water is bad for you. Right? So context and nuance is important. But people treat these things as like, well, hey, if water can kill me, I better not have any of it. You say that's crazy. But we do that with other things, right? I don't know if anybody, I've pulled this analogy out a couple of times, but we have some newer faces. So like at one point in the last 5 years, people were like, don't eat apples. Don't eat apples. They have arsenic. Anybody remember this? Apples have arsenic in them. They do, in the seeds. And people were like, you don't eat them. They have arsenic. There is something known as, we have some paramedics in the room, the effective dose and the lethal dose, right? The saying is the dose makes the poison, or the dose makes the cure, right? What do you derive a cure from? From poison. Works both ways. How do I use it, and in what quantity do I use it? That's kind of the discussion today. So what is the middle way? And I'm going to lean back on my martial arts history. Some of you are like, yeah, big surprise. But here it is, okay? I do this a lot. This is where I grew up. We talk about the teachings of the Buddha in particular, right? And again, this isn't a religious discussion. I'm not pushing Buddhism on anybody. I'm talking about what are the lessons that we can take out of these stories, and how can we apply them to our lives as active firefighters? So in this line of reasoning, in this system, they take that suffering often comes from living at the extremes. And in the story of the Buddha, the story of his enlightenment, he experienced both ends of the spectrum before he arrived there, right? He lived a life of absolute luxury inside the story of the Buddha. And then he swung completely in the opposite direction, practicing extreme and severe self-denial. So on one end, it was complete gluttony. And on the other end, it was severe self-denial, deprivation, starved himself, pushed his body to his limits, and believed suffering itself would lead to wisdom. Have you ever caught yourself believing that? That my suffering is going to lead to wisdom. I have to suffer. I deserve to suffer. But here's the thing. In this story, neither of those extremes brought the peace and the clarity that, in the upbringing of this person brought peace or clarity. Neither extreme. The extreme deprivation and the extreme gluttony, neither one. And eventually came to realize there was another path that didn't involve indulgence and the extreme indulgence, and it didn't involve extreme deprivation. It involved balance. And this isn't about mediocrity, right? Because we've said this before. People say balance You see this in the business world. You want a balanced life, you'll never be successful. You get firefighters to say that too, right? Hey, if you don't work at least one overtime shift every pay period, well, I mean, you don't really deserve to be a firefighter. You know those people. As I've been told, they're at every department. Okay. But what's that mean, really? And you can like overtime or not. That's not what this is about. What it is about is realizing it's about sustainability. It's not mediocrity. Balance does not mean mediocrity, and it doesn't mean evenly distributed either. This is where people misunderstand balance. They say, oh, I don't want to be balanced. I'm not trying to live a 50-50 life. Ladies and gentlemen, you can stand on one foot. Your weight is not evenly distributed, and yet you stay upright, rooted, and grounded. 1 foot off the ground, or 90% of your weight distributed to 1 foot, one leg, and you're still upright, rooted, and balanced. So it's not about 50-50. It's about being sustainable. It's about being grounded. It's about choosing what can be maintained for a lifetime. If you're in this program, you're not here to do a summer shred. You're not here to lose 30 pounds in 90 days. I swear if I hear another one of those programs pop up on my feed, I'm going to lose my mind. All right. I got it. They're everywhere. But the point of this is sustainability. So you can take a lifestyle with you that you have forever. So you have to ask yourself, what can I tolerate and maintain forever? Not what can I do for 3 months? Because that's a different outcome. So ask yourself genuinely, where do you live in extremes? All of us have the areas that we tend to be drawn towards, right? It could be fitness. We got a lot of people that live in fitness extremes. We have usually firefighters being in two buckets, right? We got the people that like have never touched a weight, but then on the other end of the spectrum, you got the people that are doing, hey, if you're not doing a gear workout every single day, on shift, off shift, CrossFit, this, XYZ, like you got to burn the candle at both ends. Both of them come with their own detriments. Usually those people get injured more than anyone else, in my experience. Okay. Nutrition, we kind of already covered that. Work. Sometimes there's firefighters and people in general, even outside the fire service, that would spend more time working than doing anything else. Maybe in their relationships, in their finances. Okay, maybe I'm pretty scarce with my money until that parlay starts to look really nice on DraftKings, and then all of a sudden that parlay starts looking really good. These are all just examples, right? And you're wired for extremes in this lifestyle. That's what you have to realize, is that firefighters are wired for extremes. And the fire service, as a culture, as a structure, rewards intensity. Why? Why does the fire service reward intensity? Let me just ask you that. Just one or two people. Why does the fire service reward intensity? What about it? What do we think? It's an intense job a lot of the times, yeah? Why? I'll wait. Or I'll call on somebody.
A big part of the culture,
Sure. Part of the culture.
Yeah, I was going to say it's the tradition of it, right? Like, what do we want to change? When do we want? Never.
Yeah. Yeah. It rewards intensity. And then there's also something about the job description itself. Both of what you said is true, but it's also true that when the tones drop, intensity saves lives, right? You have to commit fully. You have to move decisively. You have to not hesitate, because that's what the job demands. The challenge is that many of the firefighters never learn, once you learn that skill, we never learn how to turn it off. The same mindset that serves us on the fire ground can work against us at home. And by the way, this is not like, because you probably have heard me say like, hey, if you could just learn the mindset of what makes you successful on shift, how many times have I said, if you could just adopt the problem solving capability that you have when you come across a complex situation on the fire ground, when there's changing conditions and your plan A doesn't work and you're like, oh, crap, plan A is not working. But nobody at that moment goes, all right, you guys, hey, plan A didn't work. Pack up your bags. We're just going to let this one burn. Nobody says that. No, you become a problem solver. But then we don't apply that skill set to everyday life. What if like failure wasn't an option in your pursuit in this program or in any other pursuit that you have in life? I will die on the hill that you have a skill set that so few of the general population will ever touch because of what you are forced to do on shift. And what if you could apply that in other areas? Now, are there things that you don't want to take home with you? Yeah, maybe this all or nothing mindset. Maybe that mindset that has served you, that intensity, that all or nothing, attack everything with maximum effort, maximum hours, maximum workouts, maximum overtime, maximum sacrifice. And then we wonder why we burn out. So here's the thing. Intensity is a tool. It's not a lifestyle, not a sustainable one. Intensity is a tool you should learn how to switch on and off, not leave it running the entire time, right? Why do we have problems with recovery? Ever heard a firefighter say something like this? I'll cut out all sugar forever. I'll never drink again. I'll sleep when I'm dead. That's a big one. I'll sleep when I'm dead. It's like, yeah, we might get there a lot faster if you don't, Hey, I guess the point is that these aren't always signs of discipline. Sometimes they're a sign of imbalance. I'm not saying to not go after things with effort. I'm saying to learn to apply it more practically. So it kind of goes into this next part, which is like, what's the all or nothing trap, right? And this is one of the biggest barriers for lasting change. And I've had several conversations with you. I've enrolled a couple of you in this room into this program myself, and we've had this conversation. One of the biggest barriers to lasting change is the all or nothing trap. Let me give you an example. Miss one workout. And then all of a sudden you're like, my whole week is ruined. That's it. I'm just not going to do the rest of them because I already screwed up. I already screwed it up. That's it. It's trash. Whole week's trash. I'm just going to start again next week because I couldn't be perfect with it. Eat one cookie. Now the entire weekend is ruined. They're like, I screwed up the whole weekend. I ruined my whole diet. And sometimes because of that mindset, you're like, well, I already screwed up. I might as well go all in, right? I know when I used to do this, I would do it, feel like I screwed up, and then I would have a conversation with myself and I'd be like, well, I mean, listen, I don't know that the next time I'm going to get to do this again. So I better enjoy myself, right? I'll be good tomorrow. I'll be good starting tomorrow. But right now I already screwed up. So like I might as well just get as much of this as I possibly can. I'll give you an example of this, like a very real practical situation. Anybody ever bake brownies at the station? I know it's like a bunch of, we're at the fire department, but like we bake brownies, don't we? Like the baked goods, sometimes somebody drops off a tray. You know how it goes. One time at the station, I ate like 2/3 of a tray. Like I lost control. I lost control and binged on the entire thing. I was like, I literally could not physically stop myself. I was like, I just don't know. I hadn't had a brownie in a while and I was just had the first one and I was like, fuck, I wasn't even supposed to have that. And then I just became a loose cannon. And oh my God, the way that I felt about myself after that occasion, like I did feel like I've erased 3 months of work with this decision. That's how I felt. And it made me want to give up. But the truth of the matter was, well, that wasn't true. Right? Was it a bad moment? Yeah. Did it consume 2,000 calories in a 30-minute time span? Yeah. But it happened. And here's the thing. Did I get off track? Or did I have a moment of imbalance? Was one mistake become permission for 10 more? Now, who taught us that one imperfect decision erases every good decision that came before it? Who gave us that story? Right? Because I think we all carry it in one way, shape, or form. Maybe that's the type of people that are drawn to the fire service. But somewhere along the line, we started believing it. And here's the thing. I want you to imagine, because this is the truth. Like on that story that I told you, consistency is going to beat intensity. I believe this. I believe that Consistency will beat intensity because it is longer lasting. And the change that we see and the trends that you want isn't found in being super intense for 10 days at a time and then having a 2-week intermission where you weren't able to keep it up before going back to another 2 week of intensity, but just that small, consistent, it's the drip of water, right, on the rock over time. If you blast a rock with a fire hose, nothing's going to happen to that rock. But the slow drip over time will slowly erode it. The years know things that the days and weeks will never know. It's a saying I grew up with. So imagine this story. Firefighter A trains 6 days a week for 6 weeks. Then what happens? Well, life happens. You know, something gets in the way. They go on a vacation. They have a moment. A chaos, a trauma in the family, something gets there. So life happens because that's what life does. And they get overwhelmed and then stop for 2 months. And then that cycle repeats itself over and over and over again for 10 years. Firefighter B trains twice a week, every week, for 5 years, is able to maintain. But not just physically, more importantly, mentally, emotionally, and professionally. Who's going to make more progress over the course of 5 years? The person who trains 6 days a week for 6 weeks and then stops for 2 months over the course of 5 years, or the person who just stays consistent the entire time? And I think the answer to this is obvious. And the lesson is that small actions repeated consistently will outperform heroic efforts that can never be sustained long-term. Long-term. That is the goal of this program. Flexible consistency. You know this law. We talk about it a lot. Not perfect consistency. When life happens, when you get mandoed, when your kids get sick, when your sleep gets disrupted. Anybody ever had their sleep get disrupted? Don't answer that. I know the answer. You ever get your sleep disrupted at home? I'm sorry, at the station, and then all you needed was a good night's sleep at home, and then you just couldn't get it there either? Something woke you up in the middle of the night, God, I just needed the train going by, the emergency happened, the kids woke up, whatever it is. God, I just needed a good night's rest, and you couldn't even get it at home? So the goal isn't perfection. The goal is returning to the path quickly. I've said this before. Your goal is between every one of these events, when you quote unquote screw up, is to not beat yourself up and tell yourself you failed, but to get back onto the path as quickly as possible. And with each of these passing events, the goal is that the amount of time that it takes you to get there keeps getting shorter and shorter and shorter and shorter, to the point where after enough time, nobody except for you is going to be able to tell that you even fell off in the first place. Why? Because you rebalanced that efficiently and that quickly. And then all of a sudden people are going to start saying things to you like, man, you just never miss. Man, you're just always there. You just always have it. How do you do it? They just don't see. Right? Because the time that it took you to rebalance was so short that nobody else was able to tell the difference. But you'll know. But that doesn't stop you from continuing to do it. Now, picture like the pendulum, right? Everybody's seen a pendulum before. Here's the thing, right? Every like social movement, every new fad that comes out in diet and fitness, and look, we see these things in cycles, right? Well, you can name it right now. In the last couple of years, how many diet fads have you seen? So you got keto, carnivore, you got, paleo, you got whatever. Back in the 90s and early 2000s, fat was the enemy. People remember that. You go back through the history, everybody remember everything was low fat. That was like the birthplace of supermarket muffins, and then what did they do instead? They loaded up these muffins and these other baked goods with a bunch of sugar, and then all of a sudden we started seeing a rise in diabetes, and we started in type 2 diabetes. We started seeing other things happen. It's like, okay, then sugar and carbs became the enemy. And then, well, now it's all plants. Any kind of plant is your enemy. And it's like, we go in these cycles, right? If you just realize the nutrition cycles, they last a little while, but every couple years there's a new supplement, right? We talked last week about like, hey, you know, everybody remember hydrogen water? That was the thing that was going to change. You were never going to have inflammation again because you have hydrogen water, right? That was the thing. And then, you know, now it's peptides. Everybody's like, oh, the peptide wave. And in fitness, you know, there was CrossFit. Now there's High Rocks, right? Yeah, hybrid rock star. That's the newest thing in fitness. If some of you are looking puzzled, go ahead, check it out after this call. If you want a good laugh, I'm not saying if you do it. If you don't, I don't care. It's just another form of basically HIIT training, done in a way that is that will get you a nice good dopamine hit. All right, that's it. But here's the thing. All right. Yeah, drove you crazy how eggs keep going back and forth, good or bad, over the years. And guess what? It's going to keep doing that. We find our things, right? It's, oh, cholesterol. Now it's this. Now it's that. Now eggs are the best thing you've ever had. Oh, butter's bad. Butter's amazing. You should only eat butter. Now we got people online literally taking bites out of a stick of butter and be like, this is the only source of fat I need. You guys, you know what the overarching theme of this entire conversation is? It's extremes, right? Butter is not inherently bad. Too much saturated fat over like consistently over the course of time it's not that you can't have any of it. It's that there's an effective dose of these things. Okay. Realize what the effective, and some of us don't know what the effective dose is, or some of us have been misled on what the effective dose is. So when I talk about the pendulum, I got far away from that for a second. When we see these fads and these changes, what happens when you swing a pendulum really hard in one direction? What happens to the pendulum after it reaches the other end? What does it do?
Okay.
Comes back. Yeah, I believe doing this. It comes back about just as hard, if not more, right? That's the pendulum. Okay. The farther it swings in one direction, the farther it swings back. Each extreme restriction often leads to, anybody ever really like buckled down hard? I mean, I already told my story about binging on brownies. That was a moment of where I had been really extremely depriving myself for a while. Right? And I had one taste. I just lost it. Anybody ever have a moment like that? I bet it's not just me. Extreme training often leads to injuries. One of the first people who ever did this program, you guys probably saw his story, was Kyle, right? I've talked about him, lost 140 pounds. Kyle didn't want to do this program because he believed that he had to wake up at 4:30 in the morning before shift every day and go deadlift 400 pounds 4 days a week on top of 2 other days of extremely high, hard lifting. Impressive display of willpower. But do you know what happened to him in that first 6 months? His body gave out and he tore a hamstring. And it was only after that, and then he had to take 3 months off on his probation, tearing a hamstring. And I bet that's not the first time you've heard a story like that. So extreme training will often lead to injury because there's a lack of recovery. Extreme productivity leads to burnout. You know, you're not a machine. Like, we try to systemize everything. We live in this culture of like consumerism. Everything's about productivity. You know, the S&P 500, we drive it up, drive it up, drive it up. More productivity, more productivity. How do we get more? That's the way that systems work. That's not the way that your biological human body works. Think of your body like the engine, honestly, at your station. If you put that thing in pump and you leave it going for 72 hours, never turning it off, what happens? Shit breaks down, right? Eventually. Maybe it'll go longer. I don't know how long they've ever tested how long these things can be in pump for, but you understand the analogy, right? Like that puts the engine under a lot of duress. It puts it into a lot higher RPMs. Okay. Well, the more you press an engine over time, the faster it's going to break down. It's a simple concept. But do you treat your body that way? And what's the effective dose of exercise? What's the effective dose of all these things that we're talking about? And the farther that we live from the center, the harder life pulls us back. So I think there's an interesting analogy here too. Because you have those two types of people that I talked about. You have the people that have never touched a weight in their life, and you have the people that are like, 8 times a week, I'm no days off type people. Or you could say it's like maybe it's a type A versus a type B. I don't know if I've ever met a type B firefighter. I'm just using this as an analogy. But the point is, either of these people, let's call it the person that's never worked out and the person that can't stop working out, each one is terrified of becoming the other person. They're terrified of it. So I never want to become that type of person. So I stay over in this camp. But each of them would probably benefit immensely from learning to move to the middle. What are the qualities of the other group that I could include without losing myself in the process type person that I want to be? And then think about a time in your life where maybe you swung too far in one direction and what ended up happening afterwards. Hit the pedal to the metal, crash and burn. Okay. And here's where I think we get things twisted, because a lot of people confuse discipline with suffering. Suffering. And suffering is different than pain, right? We know this. I've said it before, but pain is one of the best teachers. Nobody likes to go to her class. Doesn't mean she's not a good teacher, though. But why do we confuse discipline with suffering? And I think like my upbringing in Eastern philosophy has helped to separate the two. Because discipline is doing what matters. And we've very simply defined discipline in this program as one sentence, right? The essence of discipline is to have a plan and follow through on that plan, no matter how you feel. It's absent of how you feel about it. That's discipline. I'm going to do something no matter what happens, no matter how I'm feeling that day, I'm going to do it. It's discipline. Well, I have to have a plan first to follow through on it, but then I'm going to do it even if I don't want to. Discipline. Okay. But punishment. Punishment is believing that you deserve pain. And how many of us punish ourselves with impossible expectations, with guilt, with shame, and self-criticism? You see, I'll be really honest with you guys on this note. There have been times in my life, sometimes recently, I would never allow anybody ever to speak to me the way that I sometimes speak to myself. If somebody spoke to me the way that there's sometimes a narrative going on inside my own brain, it would be like on sight. Be hands. Be a fight. But how often do we do that to ourselves all the time? And ask yourself this, would you coach your crew? Say you're in a position of leadership, maybe you're a leader. Would you coach your crew the way that you speak to yourself? And if you do, well, how do you feel when you do it to yourself? And do you think that's an effective way to do it? Listen, I'm not saying there's not a moment in time where somebody needs a kick in the ass, and we might be those people. Right? But it's the difference between teaching and discipline and punishment. Am I teaching this person or am I punishing them? And every one of you in this room knows the difference and probably has been in a training situation where you've seen the difference between those two things. This person's being punished. This person's being taught. Very big difference. Usually the answer should be no to that, right? Would you coach your crew the way that you speak to yourself? Probably not. You see, self-leadership isn't beating yourself into submission. It's usually the track we take inside the firehouse. It's leading yourself with honesty and compassion. Or even think about this, like you have a firefighter that misses 3 workouts because they worked, 96-hour shift and it was crazy. Is your internal narrative, I'm lazy and I failed? Or is it my body truly needed recovery? I'm going to get back on the horse. And which mindset is going to help you be successful long-term? Because guess what? That mandatory overtime, it's not necessarily going to stop. The circumstances in your life that get complicated, you don't have control over them all the time. Life is going to keep throwing you curveballs, keep challenging you to rise above those circumstances. And you see the middle way, it teaches that the rest, that it teaches you that rest is not the opposite of effort. Talked about this here. You know, in the very first few weeks, you're going to learn about recovery because it's the foundation. But why? Because it needs to be intentional. You can say like, hey, I'll just rest when I have a moment. No, you have to structure it. You have to plan for your rest, for your recovery, because it supports your long-term efforts. You just think of like the cars on the NASCAR track, right? Well, every now and again, they got to stop off to the side, replace the wheels, do that. Listen, I'm not a NASCAR guy. I don't really know how this works. I just understand that they go in, they do stuff on the vehicle, because if they don't, it's going to crash and burn later, right? And they're like, oh, it's going to cost us time. But it has to do it for the sake of making it through the entire race, doesn't it? They know that the vehicle is going to run less effectively to the point where they're not going to cover as much distance and they're not going to make as much progress if they don't stop and tune up that thing, even if it costs them time to do it. But in the long run, it makes enough of a difference that they have to. They've realized that difference. And you are like that. Running on 3 hours of sleep. How many firefighters do you know that wear exhaustion like a badge of honor? We do. Wear it with pride. Only got 2 hours of sleep last night. Just worked a 120-hour shift. I'm legit. I haven't taken a vacation in years. Because I'm real. I'm a salty dog. Got salt in my liner. Listen, there's benefits to those things. There's benefits to being tough. I'm not downplaying being tough. I'm advocating for balance. I'm saying that too much of that can lead to being impractical about your own limitations. That's all that means. No matter how strong you feel your will is. No matter how strong your will actually is. So ask yourself, would you celebrate running the engine with no maintenance? Would you ignore the warning light when it came on? Every day you come in and check your gear, find something wrong with the equipment. What do? Well, immediately, priority, fix it. Restock, replenish. Make a ticket, solve the problem. You don't ignore it. So why do you ignore your own warning signs? Recovery is not weakness. Recovery is preparation. Everything rests on the foundation beneath it, or above it, rather. And without recovery, if you think back on the firefighter performance pyramid, without recovery, the pyramid would collapse. It's a house built on a shaky foundation. How far can you get into building a house if the foundation is flawed? Can you build a whole house? Got cracks in that foundation. How long is it going to be before that thing tumbles down? And listen, on the note of Kim doing this fundraising event, you know what took us the longest time the last time I went in April to build these homes? God, it drove me crazy. I've never built a home before. It was digging the holes and putting in the planks for the foundation. And 10 hours in, we had nothing to, it felt like we had nothing to show for it. Like, Kim, I'm giving you a warning. That's how your build's going to go. You'll be like, we haven't done anything. But it was the most important work, and once we had the foundation laid, the rest of the house goes up in 6 to 7 hours. But the first 12 is laying the foundation. Why is there so much priority on that? Because without it, none of the rest of it works. It's the most important piece. And sometimes when you're building that foundation, to this analogy, it feels like things aren't moving fast enough. But then once you have it laid, everything starts working better because of it. I can do the rest of it so much more efficiently. This analogy is actually good. We got Angie and Miriam in here as well, who will be joining us on this build. Okay. And then realize this too, because balance is dynamic. And I think that one misconception is that balance means every day looks the same. It does not. It's dynamic. Some weeks are going to require more of you, more work. Others are going to require more time with your family and things at home. Some seasons will demand more training of you, more fitness, more volume. Others are going to demand more recovery. You see, the middle way is not standing perfectly still. It is constantly adjusting while staying aligned with your values. Notice the key word there. It's adjusting. The way that you are able to do this program right now, the way that you go about your life right now, might have to look differently in how you fulfill those goals 6 months from now. Some of you looking around the room, I already know I've had conversations with you on this, have had to learn how to adapt. Like, oh man, I had a good thing going and then this thing came into my life and changed. Kim's laughing. And then I had to figure out how to do it differently. Well, great. That is the skill set we're trying to build because that's not going to stop happening. The way that I do things now certainly looks different than the way it did when I was working full time. Okay. Well, what if I can just accept that that's part of life? If I do that, it's my responsibility to learn and be okay with the fact that the way that I'm doing things right this moment might not always be the way that I do things going forward. You're going to be hit with a challenge. It's going to force you to adapt. Well, once you learn the principles, those are eternal. Once you develop the skill set of, I can just make these small tweaks and these small adjustments and still make it happen, well, then we're on the path to real sustainability because the rest of your life is going to keep happening like that. Think about when you climb a ladder. Anybody ever been a little nervous climbing a 24-foot ladder? Maybe some shaky condition. Maybe it wasn't really planted right. Maybe the angle was a bit high. Maybe that thing was shaking a little bit. What do you do on the ladder? You don't stop moving. You make tiny little continuous adjustments to stay balanced. And that's how life is. So where do you need to adjust right now to move towards your goals? And I'm not talking about overhauling your life. Where the time, you don't need to reinvent yourself. Where do you just need to adjust a little bit? And so I'll start to end with this, which is, do you have the courage to be imperfect? Because perfection, it's seductive because it gives us an excuse to delay. I'll start when all of the pieces are aligned, when all of the stars are where they need to be, when every circumstance is the way that I want it. Or is that a story that we tell ourselves? The middle way would say, start now, do what you can, adjust tomorrow, and then repeat. Because you don't need the perfect workout. You don't need the next workout. You don't need the perfect meal. Sorry, you don't need the perfect workout. You need the next workout. You don't need the perfect meal. You need the next meal. You don't need the perfect week. You need the next decision. And progress is built with one ordinary choice at a time. One ordinary choice at a time. And you sure as hell don't know what you're walking into on shift. So why the hell do you need to know every single decision for every single moment of every other piece of your life? Why do you save it for that? Every single one of you goes to a call knowing that what you show up to might not be what you're expecting, or that conditions might change. And you don't have the answer to it right that second. But you always figure it out. And the key behind that is action, not perfect action, not extremes, just act. Here's the thing. The fire service will teach us to go all in. And sometimes that's exactly what's required. But your life, it's bigger than the emergency scene. It's bigger than the fire ground. Your health, your relationship, your marriage, your parenting, your friendships, your mental fitness, your mental health. None of those thrive under constant extremes. They thrive under steady, intentional care. None of them thrive under extremes. And I think what the middle way reminds us is that strength isn't found by living at the edge. It's the opposite. It's found in returning to the center again and again and again and again and again. And there you'll find the adjustments. So I'll give you some questions to think on. Where in your life are you living at an unhealthy extreme? What would the middle way look like inside of that area? And then what's one small adjustment you can make this week, today, that you could see yourself still doing a year from now, 10 years from now? Because that's the goal, is to build habits that you can do for a lifetime. If you can't see yourself doing it for the next 10, 20, 30 years, then why are you doing it? What are you really here to do? Are we here for some kind of temporary benefit? Or are we here to change the way that we do things and step into a new version, a new identity of ourselves? The goal isn't to become the most intense firefighter in the room. The goal is to become the type of firefighter, spouse, parent, friend, and leader who can show up with strength, with purpose and peace 20 years from now. That is the power of the middle way.